To Broadband Breakfast live online for Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. We're at the last Wednesday of August, moving into September and all the things that we will run into after Labor Day. So excited to welcome you all for another episode of Broadband Breakfast live online. We are super excited for the discussion we're about to experience. I will introduce our guests very, very shortly. Just a kind of a quick reminder, everyone, Broadband Breakfast, we are a news and media community focused on better broadband, better lives. That's our mantra. We've been at this for more than 14, almost 15 years. Obviously, there's a lot of attention on infrastructure, but there's a lot of attention on making sure that there are the tools and capacity and knowledge and resources to get higher capacity broadband. And so that very much ties into the topic we'll be talking about now. But also, if you are not aware, we cover these topics every business day on Broadband Breakfast. I encourage you to go to Broadband Breakfast every day. There's new stories, new reporting, and new aspects to our community. So thanks for being with us on this program today. I also want to just tee up a couple of the events we're going to be hosting in coming weeks. They are on our page for the event, and I will share that shortly so that you have access to that. But we are going to be talking next Wednesday about the NTIA's middle mile grant application process. It is 30 days exactly until the end of the month, September 30th, when the middle mile grant applications are due. And so we'll be hearing from and weighing in on that topic of the NTIA's middle mile grant application process. We'll be talking the next week on how can cities take advantage of federal broadband funding, and a lot of concern that's been raised about cities' access to broadband as opposed to rural communities. September 21st, we're coming back to one of our favorite topics of broadband mapping and data. And then on September 28th, we'll be talking about how to value your fiber company in preparing for IIJA's capital match requirements. You can see the month of October's programs at the URL that I'll be sharing with you all shortly. And I also want to, before again I introduce our guests, thank the sponsors of Broadband Breakfast for the support they provide that make this programming, the Broadband Breakfast programs, every Wednesday possible. Our sponsors include Utopia Fiber, Broadband.money, Google Fiber, Broadband Now, Lightbox, Ookla, Michael Baker International, Pinpoint Capital Advisors, Bitstream Communications Inc., Positron Access, and the California Emerging Technology Fund. Thank you to our sponsors for your support. All right, let me just, with that, go ahead and open our view up to everyone. And I'm really, again, looking forward to hearing from all of the people we have participating in this session today. They include, first and foremost, I should say, Craig Settles. Craig's just a great friend and advocate, and he did a piece, an expert opinion for Broadband Breakfast almost a month ago. Very, very creative. Craig Settles, if you can't give away free internet, consider telehealth. And I love that title and that story. And Craig's, in truth, the motivator for this discussion. So Craig, I thank you for that. Thanks for bringing that idea to us. And Craig Settles, of course, is very knowledgeable in this area, saved by a telehealth from a stroke. He works with community broadband teams and healthcare stakeholders throughout telehealth projects to transform healthcare delivery. And Craig, we're very excited to hear your thoughts on the Affordable Connectivity Program. After Craig kicks off, we will hear from Matthew Rantanen. I hope I got that name right, Matt. Matt and I met him just over a year ago, maybe earlier, but it was a very exciting discussion. And he's the director of technology for the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. He is a Cree, Norwegian, and Finnish cyber warrior for tribal broadband. So really excited to hear your thoughts on the Affordable Connectivity Program at this time, Matt. Next up, we're going to hear from Kevin Easterling. Kevin's the CEO of the Black Heritage Association of the Lehigh Valley and the chair of the Allentown Digital Inclusion Initiative. He's a Lifeline Emergency Broadband Benefit and Affordable Connectivity Program consultant for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance and the Pennsylvania BPOP. I guess that's BIPOP Broadband Coalition. So really excited to hear your thoughts on this, Kevin. And batting cleanup will be Margaret, Peggy Talbot, and she is one of the original co-founders of Beacon Place, and she served in myriad broadband roles and volunteer and board roles, including board vice president, board treasurer, and leading marketing and development officer for Beacon Place. And really want to hear from her concrete experience with Connect Waukegan and learning about the way needy families in Waukegan and North Chicago have benefited from the work of Connect Waukegan. I guess, just one more quick thought before opening it up to Craig. We want to just remind everyone, so the provenance of this, Lifeline is the original name. Emergency Broadband Benefit was the pandemic name, and now the name is Affordable Connectivity Program, right? And Lifeline was always very underfunded. It was just, it was like a $10 a month benefit, $40 a month for tribal communities. And first it was only phones. And then finally, like 7 years ago, they finally extended it to broadband, but it was still a kind of a grudging little tiny number. And then when the emergency broadband benefit came along in the pandemic, well, it was bumped up quite considerably to, I think, 70 or $75 a month, basically a way to make sure people could get access to broadband, low-income individuals could get access to broadband. First the appropriations bill, and then the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funded that new Affordable Connectivity Program more substantially. And there's roughly 14 to 18 billion funded for that. But still questions about how long will that last? That's one question. But the other question is, do enough people know about this, right? Are people getting the word out? Because Lifeline has never been an easy program to get. There's always been lots of bureaucracy with it. And I look forward to hearing, how we overcome the challenges of bureaucratic forms and getting this benefit, this Affordable Connectivity Program. But I think that the key point I'm trying to get to, more slowly than I like, is that the FCC just last month, or just this month, less than a month ago, kicked in $100 million to provide outreach, to provide like marketing, attention, publicity on the fact that there is this Affordable Connectivity Program out there. And so we'll hear from our guests about, well, how is that money being used? How should it be used? How can we make sure the word is getting out about the Affordable Connectivity Program? Well, again, with that, let's turn it over to you, Craig. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about the Affordable Connectivity Program right now.
Okay, so I look at the program, the Affordable Connectivity Program, as a trial run, right? With that $45 billion for broadband, for infrastructure, digital inclusion, and so forth, right? That money isn't going to be available for about a year, right? However, with the ACP, we have an opportunity to try out ideas, programs, marketing programs, and so forth. And so I feel that there is an opportunity to use ACP as a launch pad and trial and error kind of thing to figure out how we will work with the $45 billion that'll be coming up down the road, right? So at a conference I was at recently, they asked us, what do we fear as we get ready to start the planning and so forth for the big money, right? And I said the problem I foresee is that we could get 3-4 years down the road and we find out things were being done wrong, not to our best advantage and so forth. And at that point, it's kind of late in the ball game. So I feel that the time to do the effective planning is now, right? And so one of the things that has come up regularly is we don't engage minority communities enough. We have processes that we use and employ. We have best practices and so forth, which is great, except for they don't necessarily include those organizations, right? Those populations, right? We have Hispanics, we have Latinos, we have African American, the Native American tribes and so forth, right? And so to me, we need to have a different focus as we move forward. And ECP should be a great trial place to do all of this, right? Because we have a tendency as funders for all of these projects, as consultants for these projects, we have a tendency to want to do things our way. We want to have a program that looks at all these different best practices, and that may not be. In fact, I will tell you that there are a lot of folks in the trenches who are actually doing these projects where they feel they hate the term best practices because they feel like there's a whole sort of a savior mentality of these people coming into the community and not addressing the things that are important. And I think that when we look at the needs assessment, when we look at the different processes of marketing planning, outreach planning, and so forth, we need to look at it from a different perspective. We need to look at it from the perspective of the people who have the problem. And I am firmly, attached to this idea that if we don't engage the folks that have the problem, regardless of what minority group, rural group, whatever, right? We will not be effective. And I think we'll get into that situation of like 2 years down the road, with the full on
Right.
broadband program. So let's do things right on the front end.
Great. No, thank you. And thank you for your leadership, Craig, for everything you're doing on this topic. We've had some good chatter already. I'm sure it will continue. Let's go to Matt, and then to Kevin, and then to Peggy. So go for it, Matt.
Sure. Thank you. So thanks for the introduction, Drew. I just wanted to share with you that, I'm working with 25 federally recognized tribes at the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. I've been there for 21 years, and I'm a recovering graphic designer. And why is that relevant? It's relevant because a lot of the parts of what we do around broadband rely on marketing. And a lot of people that are in this space don't know about marketing. The Affordable Connectivity Program is a lesson in how to engage your community and how to get the message out, and then get follow through from the community to be a participant in this program. I was speaking with our accounts rep yesterday, and she said that honestly that the program has improved dramatically since the transition from EBB. It's been a lot easier. Essentially they sign up, they forward their email, their approval email, and then fill out our form, and then she finds them and connects them to our account. However, getting somebody to take the initiative to get online, to fill out a form, to do that is the step that is the complicated piece. To educate folks as to why, as to the fact that you're not signing up for something other than just a subsidy that supports your broadband connection, and then actually finding the time to do that. Or do they have the proper connection to do that? If they're already on the network, then hopefully they do. If they're not on the network and they're signing up as a new customer, maybe they don't have good access to broadband to do that. Do you have facilities at your office to bring them in to help them sign up? There's a lot of steps along the way that that are just minor barriers to entry. But mostly it's the fact that they don't understand what's going on and why there's another thing they have to sign up for. I'm already part of the TANF program, the temporary aid for needy families. Why do I have to sign up for another thing? Why can't TANF just automatically sign me into that? And those are good questions. Why can't other federal programs that already, align you with these opportunities? Why can't you be, auto enrolled or opt-in enrolled to all of those choices at the federal government? Break down the silo walls between the departments, and let's have people that sign into federal subsidy programs get access to all the federal subsidy programs. Make it easier for folks. And it is a hardship to fill out forms and to repeatedly fill out forms, and there's a lot of checks and balances there. So making that process easier would be good. And there's a dynamic that happens in the tribal space. So as tribes are now looking at only $3 billion coming specifically for broadband infrastructure, when we're looking at potentially a $10 billion solution, you're a third of the way there. How does a tribe build a network that incumbents avoided for decades because they couldn't find a return on investment to make it work in their business case? But how does a tribe then build a network to, let's say, 500 homes or 1,000 homes and not get 100% subscription rate because people can't afford the program, and then not be able to sustain their broadband efforts and communications efforts and maintain their network because they don't have enough revenue stream from the subscribers? ACP is a big gap filler there, and there are people in their community that will benefit from being on this program, and it will subsidize that. It also subsidize the functionality of effort that the tribe is making to stay in communications and to stay relevant in today's society. So there is a section of this where it goes hand in hand with success in keeping your broadband in your community. The only problem is this money's going to run out, but we at least have the bucket created, and the bucket is currently full. But predictions from my friends at Institute for Local Self-Reliance, they're saying that mid 24, this money is going to dry up unless there's another infusion, and we need to look at showcasing the success of this program and getting as many people on this program as possible to be able to identify its level of impact. So moving forward, we can refill that bucket. Thanks.
Well, thank you again, and lots of questions occurring to me, and I'm sure to others. Please keep the questions coming. You can ask your questions in the Zoom chat. We're also on other platforms, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and I believe I can see questions posed there. But thank you for those remarks, and look forward to kind of drilling into this a little bit more. Kevin, give us a little bit of perspective on your thoughts about the Affordable Connectivity Program both the potential positives and the concerns that you have too.
Thank you, Drew. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to participate today. I wanted to remind you, I'm not sure if you remember, but about late 2018, we were actually trying to build our own mesh network, and I had reached out to you and your organization about doing some of that stuff. But nonetheless,
Great.
COVID, and
thank you for the reminder. Yeah.
yeah, COVID hit, and we kind of changed our course like you have to do sometimes, and we went the EBB, the emergency broadband route, and began registering a lot of our Allentown community that were eligible for the program. So I have a fairly different perspective for a couple different reasons. So our organization got involved with the Lifeline program, which a lot of people don't realize. Ronald Reagan actually started the Lifeline program about, I think it was 1984. And so the telecom industry has a huge jump on how to disseminate Lifeline subsidies through their telecom. It used to be a misnomer, but it was called the Obama phone program. But it was actually Ronald Reagan who started that. And so now you have Lifeline, and you have the Affordable Connectivity Program. And one of the things that we did to actually reach out to our minority community was to really partner up with a lot of the telecom outreach agents that they have in our area. Pennsylvania, we are actually one of, I'm not sure if it's 19 now or 28 states that are considered restricted. In other words, if our city mayor wanted to actually develop its own network, he'd have to get permission from the incumbent, which is Verizon. And so I bring this up because I saw Kevin Taglang in the question, someone had posed the question as ACP and Lifeline separate, and they are kind of separate, but they are. And I'll get to that in a moment, but I wanted to bring some clarity to that because that's on the side where we're seeing some of the problems. But I think for Allentown, we're kind of blessed in that we are a majority Latino city. I think in the last census, we had, I think it was almost 65% of our city is a Latino population, another 12 to 11% African-American. And so for us, it's just imperative to really develop the relationships with other community-based organizations that provide various services. So we kind of partnered up in both of those ways, working with the telecom agents and also working with some of the local communities. Now, we're trying to really develop, we actually have a very good relationship with our library. And so our library, they have a Tech Tuesdays program. They allow our agents to set up inside the library and outside the library. And so that's one of the things that we've kind of done. We're kind of trying to make some inroads with our current new city administration, and we'll see how that pans out. But also, we've made great connections with our school districts. So I often tell organizations, connect with your school districts and your municipalities, and you'll see it from there. And we have a large group of what I call local minority businesses who help support us. And so we were fortunate in the early stage to connect with two foundations. We had the Lehigh Valley Writer Pool Collective Impact Fellowship and the Lehigh Valley Community Foundation. And they were very helpful with really supporting some of the seed money and some of the research dollars to help us really gather the data that we needed. We also tapped into, we use a lot of CRA funding. And so the reason I bring some of these funding strategies up is because, like Matt said, a lot of this funding isn't going to come about until end of 2023, 2024. And until we know the burn rate, meaning how much of this money we are drawing down from the NLAD or USAC, we don't really know how long the program's going to last. But it is very important that we continue to build those relationships with different communities so that you can do a strong outreach program when the funding actually becomes available.
All right. So to the question that's been framed of Lifeline versus ACP, could you just speak to clarity for me so I don't repeat misinformation?
Right. So when you and the reason we found out because, like I said, we partner up with the telecom. So we have about 5 different agencies: Ntouch, SafeLink, QLink, Gen Mobile, and there's Assurance. And so if you've seen the marketing that these guys have, and like I said, they've had a 35-year jump start. So if you go to an agent and you get a free phone, the agent there is actually processing your phone or your tablet. They also give devices. They hit a link inside their app, which these guys have a system that is just unbelievable. Like I said, they've had 40 years. And then what it does, it draws down on Lifeline and ACP. And so what that does sometimes, if you go and you get a phone, you get a free Lifeline phone, and if an agent, in order for him to get his revenue, he signs you into both ACP and Lifeline. If you go to register now for the ACP program, it gets a little hairy. And so they'll have you go back and you have to get the internet removed from the phone. And so it makes the registration process a little convoluted. And that's what we were trying to pushing through the actual NDIA. If they could separate out the drawdown on Lifeline and ACP, and vice versa. If you have ACP already registered and you've been approved, and you go out and you say, hey, I want to get a tablet, you get the tablet, you risk the possibility of having your free ACP cut off. And so that's because when Obama came into office, he was the president who actually included broadband bills to be included in Lifeline. And so that mechanism is still in place. And it just makes the process a little difficult. So you kind of have to navigate that.
All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to come back to this point about the difference or the similarity. And I think what I'm hearing or understanding, inferring here is that, the reason we can't think of them as separate programs is you can't get a subsidy on both Lifeline and ACP. It's one or the other.
You're allowed to. It's just difficult the way the administrative process is now within USAC, who actually administers the program.
All right. Well, maybe we'll drill into this a bit more, but let's hear now from Peggy Talbot. Tell us a little bit about Connect Waukegan and your experience with the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Sure. Thank you for being included in this. We're super excited. For those of you who aren't familiar with where Waukegan, Illinois is, we're about 45 miles north of Chicago. It is a low income, high immigrant urban community. And I am co-chair of Connect Waukegan, which is a collective impact task force that includes a number of critical stakeholders: the city, the county health department, the public library, the school system, all kind of working together, addressing digital equity, which, as we all know, kind of includes access, adoption, and utilization. Access does it exist, but it also includes, can I get to it? And so for us in an urban community, a lot of that is where the greatest barrier is affordability. And so one of the initiatives that has come about through our Connect Waukegan team is a focus on expanding the adoption of ACP as a way to tackle that affordability barrier. We have hired a community digital navigator who works as a field agent in the community, which means she pushes out through trusted partners, works directly with organizations and residents to not only enroll them in ACP, but actually help them apply their benefit at their ISP, which, as I'll share a little more on, is the truly impactful part of the process and the most cumbersome. To date, she's been active since June. We've worked with over 300 different residences or residents, and have about 40% of them already receiving the benefit. It can take anywhere from 90 minutes to 8 hours to complete that entire process. It is not easy. And in a community that has a high immigrant population, there are additional burdens. One of the things that I think has been discussed is that There is a requirement and a need for outreach and education. I would say in low-income communities, you have an additional burden of re-education because there are bad actors. Kevin Tagline noted in the chat that the agent should have and would have informed the consumer. That isn't happening. So in low-income communities, we represent populations that have a high opportunity for ISPs to be able to utilize this benefit. And so we have a lot of work that we're doing that not only has to inform residents that this benefit exists, but then re-inform them, because there are people walking the streets with a backpack full of tablets saying, here's a free device, free internet, and free is not free. It's being paid for with that resident's benefit. And so we've had a whole campaign around that because they didn't understand that that was a choice they were making. So re-education is another component. When we look at the greatest challenges for minority communities and their participation in ACP, first of all, as has been pointed out, right off the bat, you're dealing with the least connected, least digitally literate populations and pushing them through a process that uses technology. So let's just start right there. You're trying to get people who, like I worked with a man yesterday, he was trying to apply both his Lifeline and ACP benefit because he just wanted a phone. That's all he does. He just wants to talk. He needed both of those benefits to get unlimited talk minutes. That shouldn't exist. So you've got, challenges that you're working with people, and it's why we've taken an approach that a phone bank doesn't work. You might need to upload documents. You might need to have multiple touches. We work with a ubiquitous provider in our community that once you get enrolled in ACP and approved there, to apply it at the provider, there's a 48-hour wait period. Okay, right off the bat, that means 2 times you've got to be able to access email and connect with someone. Okay, that's impossible when you're working with someone who's never had an email. So there's a lot of things in this process where we'd say, okay, the way it was structured is not oriented towards the population it's most intended for. As I mentioned, the high penetration of sort of the bad actors makes it a cumbersome process. When somebody on the street accepts that free device and then encounters us at Connect Waukegan and wants to use the benefit for their Xfinity at home, now we've got to pull it off one device and apply it to another. So right there, that's a multi-step process. When you work in a community that has a high immigrant population and residents who do not have Social Security numbers, I cannot tell you, it's probably a factor of at least 10 times the complexity that enters the process. So when you're using, any other form of identification, matricular ID or anything that is not a Social Security number, immediately we've had one of our volunteer members become a notary because we've had to demonstrate proof of life for a resident to say that, yes, they are alive, therefore they receive the benefit. For immigrants who might have multiple names, the system has a really hard time when you don't have just a single first name and a single last name. That can create all kinds of barriers when you go to apply it at the ISP. As I mentioned, you have to upload evidence and documentation, which if you're not sitting with a person, that's why our digital navigator now travels with a portable printer scanner. So there's just things like that we've learned through the process that makes this challenging. I think the last point I'd make is that low-income populations, if they've had experience with connectivity in the past, it oftentimes has come from a sort of minimally acceptable solution, a poor device with the lowest level of internet. So when they look at the value of that connectivity in their life, their experience has been impacted by that. And one of the things that we really want to try and promote is that it's really important for them to have the maximum experience, because their device might be old, their modem might be old, their digital literacy might be low. They need to have the best possible experience. Again, give an example of a provider in our community that had a low income $19.99 a month product in the past. Well, lo and behold, EDB and ACP come out and now they have a $29.99 a month product. But that product only doubled the speed, but tripled the cost.
Right.
Hello, what is that? We call it the triple double. We need to push providers to offer alternatives to, this population that is receiving the benefit that are better suited to their real life needs and ability to live in the 21st century.
All right.
So that's just a little bit.
Thank you very much. Now let's dive into some different aspects of this, and let me take two areas that may be big areas, if you will, right, in terms of the question of opt-in or not opt-in. Okay, right. So in other words, we heard some discussion about the TANF benefit, and violating my own rule, I can't remember what that stands for, right? Is this the what does the TANF stand for?
Temporary aid for needy families.
Okay, so temporary aid for needy families is a easier to get, apparently, benefit, right? And the point that's been made, that several of you made, is that affordable connectivity program, you have to apply separate from the TANF benefit. Why is that the case? Why can't we flip that and make it opt in, so to speak, or you get it no matter what. And the second one is just, I mean, and you just recounted some of these, Peggy, but I've listened to webinars and webcasts by groups, including the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and they're just kind of horror stories about the bureaucracy to get this. And it's like this is a bit of a war with itself, because we've got the FCC saying we need more attention on this. We've just put in $100 million to market this program more, and yet the program itself has got a lot of barriers and boxes to check and I's to dot and T's to cross. So let me open up to all of you as to is there a way to change this kind of the default assumption, and why are there so many kind of contradictory aspects of trying to get more people in a program when you have so many obstacles to getting people into that program?
I had a question for Matt. It's my understanding when you register, USAC, which manages the NLAG, when you register, it matches, it already knows, it does a cross check with TANF, Section 8, Medicaid, all the different benefit programs, and then it actually bases your approval on the similarities of the program. So when you actually register for ACP, system checks, it's going to each of those systems. So I was just really trying to understand the issue that you talked about as far as registering over and over.
In the latest iteration, yeah. So, and this is, you got to remember what Peggy was commenting on too. You have folks that are, not used to this, to being digitally literate.
Right.
This is a new experience for them. They don't know to look for some of those steps. Also, the angle that I'm playing is you already are registering for like the TANF program or the WIC program, or any of number of low income, National School Lunch Program. Any of those programs qualify you. So why can't, when you do those applications, which you're already involved with, why can't that automatically get you, as Robert C. put in the chat from USDA, why can't there be a voucher at that point that just automatically gets you into the next thing, or a record locator or something that you just plug that in and you're good to go, or if it pre-qualifies you or something on that level. There are so many programs that folks that are in impoverished communities deal with and sign up for. It just seems like we could eliminate the number of signups to one.
Yeah,
and I think it's.
Go ahead, Peggy.
I was just going to say, and I think that's what you're addressing is the complexity of enrollment in the program, but I would still kind of really push all of us to think about enrollment in the program does nothing until you apply it at the provider. So you have to look at that second piece. So being, even simplifying, the application process, which I agree with everyone, when it first came out, we've worked through a lot of the enrollment challenges. It's applying the benefit at the provider that we consistently see is the much harder piece. And if you don't simplify that, like we've had residents who they'll go through and get to the point where they've been approved, ready to apply the benefit of the provider. We're now on hold for 2 hours with a provider. They've got to leave. We've got to come back, and they fall off.
Yeah.
They're all they need to do is that last step, but it takes so much for people who don't have that capacity. That's the part you've really got to, that's where we have to lean on the providers, I think.
Hey, Peggy, I know from Craig that the Connect Waukegan has, as I understand it, Waukegan has a 59% Hispanic and Latino residents and 16% African American. And according to Craig, please tell us, you've got some pretty impressive statistics for your affordable connectivity program effort, including numbers of days and hours. Could you just repeat or reiterate for us what have you been able to do and how have you been able to do it?
Well, what we do right now is we track enrollment all the way through applying the benefits, and it's really we've divided into 7 steps in the process. So, and it goes from initial outreach and that education piece all the way through completing the benefit and having it, valid at the provider. And so then we track the amount of time it takes with each individual that we touch. And so that's where we can get to the data where we've, been able to enter more than 300 resident households in this process. We can see where they're at. And, when we look and we can say, okay, well, about 40% of those have moved through to the last 2 phases where they've been approved and accepted through USAC. We're ready to apply. We've initiated the process at the provider. Getting them over that last hump is the hardest part. And as I said, that's where you run into things like the 48-hour lag. So I think one of the things that has been imperative to our process here, because we look at both pieces, is having in-person access. And so we meet residents in our office, in the library, at their trusted partner. So I think really pushing out through trusted stakeholders is critical. People go to who they trust. And so whether you're going to meet with people at, an immigrant support center, at Boys and Girls Club, or at a school, that's where you get traction, is coming in and community through, their trusted partners. Having people who are willing to sit through and tackle the process is also incredibly important. Having digital navigators who have that sort of problem-solving focus that says, okay, we had one resident, again, she had to demonstrate that she lived at a specific address, couldn't find, because they were switching accounts at the provider and it made it cumbersome, actually had to go into an AT&T store with documentation that said, I really do live at this address, and this is what we're going to, it's crazy the hoops that people have to go through and the support that can be provided.
Well, okay. So Peggy, just let's stick with you for just a second, right? What is your reaction to the FCC's, affordable connectivity outreach program, right? This $100 million for advertising this. Is this going to do anything? And secondly, why do we have so many conflicting forces where we have one agency trying to get people to do this, and yet we have these incredible kind of, like you're saying, not only the hoops we've been through on the eligibility enrollment, but the second hoop, the hoop of applying it to the provider that you've reiterated for us. So what do you think of the new outreach program and what will come of that?
Well, I think a couple of things there. Number one, I think education is important, and I think a national campaign would help all of us. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in every municipality around the country. So blast it out far and wide. That will help all of us. There's no reason for everybody to apply for a grant to do education in their local community. That 100 million won't go far enough. So I'd say right off the bat, do a major national initiative to educate people. But then secondly, really emphasize that there's an understanding, residents have to understand this is their benefit to choose where they apply it. But on an interesting aspect, it's not like, a link card. You don't get the benefit in your wallet. The benefit is paid to the provider. So they have to understand that it's like, I'm walking around with knowledge of this benefit, then I need to go decide where I'm going to apply it. I think the challenge with the outreach money is we don't know exactly the limits around how it can be used yet. And so we would make a strong argument that if nationally they could cover a lot of the broad education, then individually we can apply for the grants that work best in our community. So our community might say we need more ground level navigators because our process is so cumbersome for the population we serve. Another community might have a different need. We can't right now, like, there's no billboard big enough for us to make that be the solution to getting people through those last cumbersome cycles. So, you know, as we look at our unique situation, we would say, you know, create that education, manage the provider piece of this, get better control. There's just a whole lot of firms out there that are saying, oh my gosh, what's better than a guaranteed $30 a month income stream from the federal government? All I need to do is sign people up and then I just start collecting. They need to better manage provider participation. We need to look at things like, we have providers that have chosen not to honor the device benefit. Yeah. So for every individual in our community that chooses that provider, right away, they're walking away from the $100 because those two benefits are bundled together. You have to you apply the, you know, the benefit towards a tablet, a phone, a, you know, device of any sort at the same place you're going to get your monthly service. Well, in our case, if Comcast is the ubiquitous provider and they've said, no way, we're not honoring the device credit, you know, right now, 90% of the people we're enrolling are at Comcast and they're all walking away from that $100 benefit. For what? Right. So I think there's work there that, again, would come through the education piece that would help people understand and again, might help tighten up some of the processes that are established currently in the system.
Craig, I know you've wanted to weigh in here for a bit. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah. So one of the upsides of the fund that's being set up by the FCC for marketing is that it brings attention to the issue that marketing is important and people have to get on. They have to understand how to do the marketing stuff, right?
Outreach.
Right. But I think the issue will be that there's like Peggy said, there's not enough in a billboard that will allow you to explain the number of things that go with the process, right? And so we need to understand that we have to do data analysis, right? I think both Kevin and Peggy have extensive data analysis brought into their program, right? And so I think that everyone needs to understand that and that the data is important. The second thing is all of the issues that will impact in a negative way has to be addressed, right? I mean, you can say, well, there's a problem with you know, it takes a day or 2 days or what have you, but really what has to happen is, how are we going to fix this as a community, or what are some alternatives to get around the problem, or can we go to you know, an office of you know, different agencies and say, we've got this program, but can you help us sell this program? Right now, it may not be something that a city can do, right? Because, you know, it's done by the state or the government, but you have to figure out how you're going to address the logistical challenges that will impede the marketing of this program.
Matt, let's hear from you on how you and what's the organization that you've been sort of representing in your efforts. Is it through the Golden State Network, or is it through
no, it's so it's mostly through Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. Okay. And I was gonna say, I mean, Craig hit the mark. Like, you're gonna want to teach those organizations that are already engaging community on these social issue levels, like our temporary aid for needy families program. You know, they intake folks that are in a low income scenario that are doing that. They automatically qualify when they're on that program. So if we can use some of those FCC dollars and some of that effort to educate those programs to help them. I mean, they are there to help them get back into education, to get back into the workforce, to get off the program, right? So getting off the program, one of the tools to get off the program is to get access to broadband so that you can do your job research online, you can do continued education, you can do, access to applications and things. That's the kind of marriage of efforts at the community level that we need to see, where we could use some of those FCC dollars to help programs like the TANF program to be able to identify, okay, this client is eligible. Let's go through the process of helping them sign up for the program, and then informing the ISP. And in our situation, we own, the biggest part of the ISP connects 17 of those tribes, called the Tribal Digital Village Network, something that we built over the last 20 years. So we can sort of work hand in hand with the communities because we are there and we're owned by the tribes. But there are other providers as well that, sort of are in parts of our communities. And I think that getting the flow of information from the people that can help them walk through the process and actually act as a digital navigator, as Peggy said, at the TANF program, and then walk them over to the ISP and get them on board and do the follow-up to make sure that that happens as part of their program to get folks back into the workforce, to get folks back into education and back on their feet.
Go ahead, Peggy, please.
I was just going to say, I think, Matt, that's exactly what we've done here. We have community health workers through the health department. Some are on a grant through the library. So, and we have a United Way 211 team that we have worked to train on the enrollment process in ACP. And again, that helps move people through those first segments of, what we see as that, sort of 7-step process. Again, the challenge is getting them over the finish line, getting them over the goal line is the harder piece. What we don't have yet, and that is, I think, an important point, is any of the support from the ISPs is all over the phone. And because that, again, is cumbersome, we don't have digital navigators via the providers that are really actively working to do that work. And so I think one of the challenges that we have to look at here is a lot of the lift that's occurring is happening. All of our funding thus far has come a little bit from the municipality, but primarily from private foundations.
Yep.
They're shoring this up. And I think that's a big ask of something that, number one, the providers are getting an inherent benefit out of this. Not only do they get the $30 credit, but there's a value there to debt collection that is a realized operational efficiency gain that it is a recognition they need to have skin in the game. We're enrolling for those that haven't been connected. We're bringing new customers. And again, there's an aspect of what we're doing that is sales support for them. And we need to figure out how to create, again, national conversations around, looking at the structure of this program and the participation of ISPs in actually delivering the benefit to the residents. And so that's where I think great emphasis, and we're doing that and can talk about how that's worked and the training that occurs. But those ambassadors kind of stop at the point where it gets really hard when you move through the ISP, because they've got other programs they're enrolling people in.
Yeah.
And so,
We've got a question here, and I want to encourage questions. We still have 7 minutes in our discussion. Robert C. asked, what about the voucher model used by the USDA's SNAP food stamp program, giving the voucher to income qualified recipient to use at any venue or carrier? Would this stimulate competition among carriers to participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program? ACP could be viewed as a stream of guaranteed revenue that supplies affordable access. So let's just take this voucher question. And do we have a voucher in ACP right now with a consumer being able to use it at different carriers or not? How is this different from what the Robert is suggesting in the SNAP program?
Well, you can't, because first a carrier has to be eligible EITC. And so all of the broadband carriers, they have to actually apply to the FCC to be in the program. And so it depends on your state who's actually approved to do it. And so in essence, you couldn't just take a voucher to anyone, because that broadband carrier might not be an EITC. So I think that might be
right. And many are making that move, right? Matt's just pointed out it baffles him that ISPs wouldn't want the steady funding stream from a brand new pool of customers.
Well,
So is there a problem in getting ISPs / eligible telecommunications carriers signed up? Is that a problem that we haven't talked about enough yet?
no, I don't see it as a problem because we have hundreds, in our state. But I think there's a perception from many of the broadband carriers that this is a handout. We actually met with some of our local broadband carriers, and one carrier kind of expressed that, well, we're not getting new customers. We're just getting existing customers that are downgrading their plans to the ACP subsidy. And so some of them, it depends how they look at it. They don't look at it as money that they're getting. They're looking at money that they're losing.
Okay.
And that's where I think,
and Peggy, yeah, please.
I was going to say, that's where I think some of our data would help, because it would substantiate that. In fact, that's the rarer occurrence that they're taking. We have had some customers who in the past had to pay for a higher speed. They had 4 kids at home trying to do remote learning. So the Internet Essentials at $9.99 at the time, 25 or 50 down, wasn't enough speed. So they paid up. Now they're looking and saying, okay, was the 100 product at $30 enough? There could be a slight downgrade, but the majority of the work we've so far has not downgraded a customer. It's brought a new customer or elevated a customer.
Right.
They've gone from the $9.99 to the $30. So that's where I'd say pushing on that argument towards the ISP is.
Right. No, that's what we push back and say, hey, the 1,000 that we've registered in the last 2 years, they've all been new customers. But their perspective, and that's what I was articulating, what they have said to us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure we're a few minutes out. I want to ask kind of a 2-part question for everyone to say on your way out. Let's go in the same order we started in, and anything else. So question number 1 is, could anyone address the kind of data I guess access point or hotspot or whatever, like what do people need to know about that part of the benefit as opposed to the recurring monthly benefit? That's question 1. Question 2 is, this is we're not gonna address this now, but I would value your thoughts on the long range plan here for the Affordable Connectivity Program. Are we going to need to move to a kind of revenue taxpayer supported system as opposed to a universal service supported system for Affordable Connectivity Program? That's question 2. So 1 is devices, 2 is long run viability of the program, and 3, anything else you think our listeners need to know about improving the Affordable Connectivity Program. Craig, your final thoughts for us here.
Right. I think that as how we look at this program is key, right? And if we look at it as it's a freebie kind of thing, well, I'm not sure that's going to benefit either the community or the ISPs, right? Because I think that goes contrary to what they're trying to do. I think that it should be pushed that it's all part of a whole, like of trying to move forward, and this is one step to move that thing forward. I think that should be a big part of how we position the ACP, right? It should not be a throwaway kind of program, right? This is part of the whole. That would be my big.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Let's hear from you, Matt, your final thoughts on these.
Yeah, I'm gonna let,
one or more. Yeah,
I'm going to let Peggy, somebody who's more qualified, hit the first one, but I'm going to talk about the second one in a little. And I want to just kind of reframe whatever the model is that keeps this thing going. The Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association has operated a TANF program for, I think it's 20 some years now. And one of the longest running, bigger programs. It's designed to work itself out of a job. It's designed to get people off of its program and back into society, functioning, education, and functioning in the workforce. So this Affordable Connectivity Program is really a tool that helps people get back on their feet, get back into society, stay engaged with society, and potentially grow out of that low income or out of that space. If not, it at least gets them to be accessible to society and for them to access society. Otherwise, they're disconnected. They're disconnected as voters. They're disconnected as, gathering information. They're uninformed about, emergency situations. They're uninformed about even just general regional information. So at least you have a better sense of community if everybody has access to be online. But I guarantee you're going to be migrating people off of this program as they get back into the workforce, because a lot of the qualifying factors are programs that are getting them back into, functional level society.
Okay. Matt, thanks for being with us and for your important contributions here. Kevin, your final thoughts on this?
My final thoughts, I look at broadband as a utility like water and electric. I challenge everyone in this room, go 3 days without your internet. And so South Korea does that. South Korea is one of the leading countries that have invested in their internet. They have some of the lower costs because they know it's a utility. Two, Elon Musk just launched SpaceX satellite internet. I think that's going to be a whole new paradigm. We often talk about urban and rural, and so we go from the transitions from fiber to broadband to the next thing. It's gonna be a paradigm shift. As far as the devices, we have to find a better way to position that program. My city in Allentown during COVID spent $900,000 for hotspots for 1 year. They worked okay, I'll just say that. But what I'll say is we really need to take a stronger look as a community at internet and the need. You can't live without it, like you can't live without water. You can't live without electricity. It is a basic utility.
Well, and thank you for being with us. Kevin, you get the last word. Peggy, any reactions you have to those final questions?
A few final thoughts here. First of all, I agree that we think of it as the fourth utility, but ask anyone in a low-income community if the first thing they do when they move into a new low-income apartment is sign up and get internet, and they're going to say no way. So looking at that value equation for low-income people, it's a more complex thing. So yes, we agree. It's also, when we think about it as a fourth utility, it's the one utility that you might have that what you pay determines what you get. So in my neighborhood, I might pay for more water that I use than my neighbor, but we get the same water. With the internet, if I pay something different, not only do I get more, I get something totally on a different quality scale. So, understanding that sort of mentality of utility is something we have to bring forth in this conversation. You start out with a question about, MiFis versus home internet. Right. We did a whole thing with our team where we really said, okay, you need to understand the difference between bits and bytes. And MiFis were a great Band-Aid solution, and in many cases are still out there as a Band-Aid solution. If you have multiple users trying to share data who want to do the kinds of things that lift them forward, as Matt suggested, then you're going to want to look at something that is more of a robust solution for multi-users in a household. When you get a one MiFi that you're trying to share across multiple members of a family, everything draws down. And Connect Joaquin, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're trying to look at affordability as one barrier, but solutioning has an interwoven approach. So we've just completed a proof of concept on a fixed wireless network solution that we think will work in certain environments, MDUs or multiple dwelling unit, low-income housing complexes that may be, where we could say, instead of having to sign up every single resident who all qualify by the nature of their validation to live in low-income housing, why does each one of them have to apply for the benefit? Why can't we have more of an institutional solution in that common network environment? I know there was just an article about this the other day. So we see, sort of a patchwork of solutions. And one of the things we all know is we're all starting to say, hey, we're not building the 10-year solution, because so many things, whether it's Starlink or others, are coming into play here that, our radius out might be a 3-year solution because things are continuing to evolve. And you're going to look at not one total solution, you're going to have to integrate lots of them.
Well, that will have to be our last word. On behalf of our guests here, Craig Settles, Matthew Rantanen, Kevin Easterling, and Peggy Talbot of Beacon Place, I'm Drew Clark with Broadband Breakfast. We'll see you next Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Take care.